Alright, boys and girls, so join me in looking at this paper. At the top it says representing and solving fractions. So let's quickly think back to last week. Last week we were engineering equivalence, and we were looking at fractions in higher terms, and we were making equivalent fraction tables and using our wonderful number 1 to find equivalence. And then on Friday of last week we were looking at simplifying our fractions and using our wonderful number 1 and dividing to get a smaller name, making also an equivalent fraction. So today what we're going to be doing is looking at some stories and now discovering how to put fractions together or separate fractions. So I'm going to start with the first story, number 1, and let me zoom in a little bit and get it nice and clear for you. And it says the models are shaded to show the fractions of the miles Joshua walked in 2 days. So for day 1 we have a unit bar, and it's divided equally into equal pieces. And so when I look at the pieces that are shaded, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces that are shaded out of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 total pieces. So I have 5/12. And then my second day, I have 1 piece that's shaded out of 3. So the rest of my question says, what fraction of a mile did he walk during the 2 days? So I feel like because I stopped in the middle of my problem and I went to label some information, I probably need to read this again. So I'm going to go through it again for a second time. And it says, the models are shaded to show the fractions of the miles Joshua walked in 2 days. Day 1, 5/12. Day 2, 1/3. What fraction of a mile did he walk during the 2 days? So now when I think about what Joshua is doing, he's walking some on day 1 and he's walking some more on day 2. So I need to think about that action. And so if you'll think about the actions that we have to choose from, we could add or we could subtract, because these amounts are not equal. And so remember, when we have unequal pieces, our only choices are either to add or to subtract. So if I have day 1 information and I'm putting that with day 2 information, then I'm going to be adding the 2 fractions. So I want you to go ahead and do what I have done on your paper. So when I look at this fraction, I see that I have a picture model, and I'm also going to take my picture and using a pencil, I'm going to think about another name for 1/3. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark my picture so that it is the same as my picture below. So 1/3 is also going to be called 4. We could call this 4/12. So another name for 1/3 is 4/12. And if I have 4/12 and I put it with 5/12, then I could get 9/12 as my answer. So there's one way to get the answer. Another way to get the answer would be to look at your fraction information. So we have 5/12. And if I didn't have these pictures here and I knew that I needed to put it with 1/3, I would want to think about another name for 1/3. So in this case, I would want to make an EFT. So an EFT is an equivalent fraction table. And I'm going to start by writing 1/3. And remember, boys and girls, we're going to count by our 1s on the top. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the bottom, we're going to count by our 3s. 3, 6, 9, and 12. And I'm going to circle 4/12 because 4/12 and 5/12 give me that common denominator piece. So remember, it's the denominator that needs to be the same. So I'm going to rewrite that here. 5/12 plus 4/12 is going to give me 9/12. The next thing that I need to think about when I'm looking at my fraction information is there another name for this fraction? We spent a lot of time last week talking about renaming fractions. Sometimes that means higher terms, sometimes that means lower terms. And in this case, 9 is kind of getting high, and so is 12. So I want to look in my factor book. So I'm going to go quickly to my factor book. I'm going to look for the number 9, and I see that I have the factors 1, 3, and 9. So just like we did the other day, we wrote our factors for 9. I'm going to write them out to the side over here. 1, 3, and 9. And I'm going to go to my number 12 page. So I'm flipping in my factor book to number 12. And so remember, we talked about if you have them in that rainbow format, it makes it easy to write the factors in order. So I have that 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And so I'm looking for that greatest common factor piece. The greatest common factor piece that they both share would be the number 3. So remembering back to Friday, in Friday's lesson, our friendly number 1 is going to take the form of 3/3. So we're going to divide the top number, our numerator, by 3, and our denominator by 3. So when I think about 9 divided by 3, sometimes it's easier to think about multiplication. And so I might be thinking about something times 3 that will give me 9, and that number is 3. And something times 3 will give me 12, and that number is 4. So my final answer for how much did Joshua walk in the 2 days would be 3/4. Make sure your paper looks like mine, and then go to the next video.